The truth is out there, as are many other alien species in Dragon Ball that we're going to talk about today. Where's our expanded universe, Toei? Hey guys, MasakoX here. So, alien species, eh? Well, there's more to them than just Saiyans, you know. Typically in Dragon Ball, if we ever got to see a new alien species, it was kind of tainted with some other thing. Like, for example, they are either meant to just be completely wiped out altogether by a completely different race, or they're just there to bring the fact that there are other life forms out there and we don't really get to know them. We have a lot in Dragon Ball, and for the most part, commonly in the Star Wars movies as well, they are just there to kind of illustrate a big point and are just there as some kind of window dressing for a much greater and more superior plot. Most of the time we don't even get into the details of the names, the culture, or even the biology. It's more along the lines of, if it looks cool, then it's probably an alien. This formula did create a really decent amount of freaky alien genotypes within Dragon Ball, but for the most part, once their time in the spotlight was done, they were kind of just pushed off to the wayside, only to give us more screen time for Saiyans. Which isn't really a good thing, because apart from their freaky transformations and their tails, they are essentially visual carbon copies of humans. Not exactly exciting. However, unlike Toriyama, Star Wars did go to the effort to try and expand upon all of those different races that were showcased in the movies in their expanded universe. Many other stories that dedicated a lot of detail to what was otherwise very small. It was pretty common in Star Wars for a book to be made for a particular race. You got a couple of 100 pages to explore them, whereas in the movies you only get maybe a couple of minutes or at best a scene. Some of those books were indeed adapted into the official lore, and some of them even survived the cull after Disney took over trying to simplify things. Some things got ejected, some things got kept and adapted. Sadly, very few Dragon Ball races got the same treatment and got more of a showcase than they did. What do I mean by that exactly? Well, you've only got to take a look at Appul's race. The fact that there's so little information about this guy's race and they're just named after, well, him, is just all the more telling. We've seen many characters in Dragon Ball that look like Appul, and even though they didn't really get much of a story told, they are there. Frieza's forces wouldn't be the same without these long-headed, magnificent weirdos. And naturally, their appearance is a cheeky little nod to the Xenomorph from Alien, as we often know from Third Form Frieza, because he did that too. So you could say that Appul did it first. So their appearance must have carried some kind of visual significance for Toriyama, even though nothing else about them carried any kind of significance at all for him. Well, it's one thing. And don't get me started on all of the races that you see in the Otherworld tournament, as well as Pycon, Ulibu. There are so many out there that you don't really get to see anything of the fact that they have warriors in their races. You get some of them in Super as well, but you don't see anything else apart from just a couple of episodes or even just a couple of minutes. We could be stuck for ages on all the different races you see in the Otherworld, but we're just going to focus our minds on the ones that are still living. There were some races in Universe 7 that did get the honour of being named and are worth talking about. But one thing I'm going to say right from the get-go, we're not going to be talking about Saiyans because we talk about them every single video or every other video. I think we're a little bit done with Saiyans, so we're going to take a little bit of a break. Sorry to burst your bubble, guys. But Masako! Fair point. So let's start off with probably one of the most developed and best known races other than Saiyans that are aliens in Dragon Ball. And that is, of course, Namekians. Oh boy, there's a lot to unpack with these otherwise minimal life forms. They've gone through a lot, going from being dubbed Demon Lords incarnate to just then slug people. It's a very big come down. Although they seem to be living a simple life right now, back in the day, they were a much more active race, really in with the space trading business. The collective then went on from their trading ways, settling down on Namek, not exactly out of choice though. If you look on many articles on Daizenshu, there is a point in the Namekian history that there was a massive cataclysm that set about the change of a more agricultural lifestyle. They were kind of just driven to this kind of self-sufficient lifestyle in order to try and survive, because remember, on Namek, there are only maybe a couple of hundred Namekians left in existence. They are on the brink of extinction. Namekians are humanoids with slug-like characteristics including antennae, light green skin, and pink patches, pale yellow in the original manga, appearing throughout their bodies. Also, many Namekians are named after words meaning slug or snail. Elderly Namekians have darker green skin and less prominent pink patches. These appear to become dull orange as the Namekian advances in age. Pointy ears and red rings, in which they have 3 red conjoined rings on their ankles and wrists, making them look like they have ankle bands and wristbands. Also in the manga, they originally only had 4 fingers, not like the 5 that we see after Super. Nice going, Toyotaro. They also possess a remarkable sense of hearing, as well as the ability to be able to survive on just water. This is all thanks to special enzymes inside of their bodies, being able to convert water into many important nutrients that can keep a body alive. Kind of like how plants work. They are capable of eating though, but I think it's mainly just for the sense of pleasure or because everyone else is doing it, because sometimes in Super, you see Piccolo eating, whereas you never did in Z. And that I think is just there to conform, or just like, I don't know, it's there. However, Xenoverse 2 goes on to elaborate that Namekians are also lactose intolerant, as is actually seen in a side quest which you're meant to go and try and collect milk and take it to planet Namek, or at least the Namekian clan. Then you find out, oh, they can't drink milk. Wow, what a pointless quest. Namekians are also hermaphrodites, and they produce through the method of parthenogenesis, or essentially asexual reproduction. The Namekian parents also have somehow the ability to be able to control what kind of Namekian their offspring becomes. Either they become a warrior type of Namekian, or they become the ones that can eventually make Dragon Balls. King Piccolo seems to be one that particularly mastered the whole process. They can either become warriors or priests. It's essentially your parents trying to pick your class whenever you're playing an MMO. What's interesting though is that this lore tends to change as we go on through Dragon Ball Z, which is very common with Toriyama, and it turns out that back on planet Namek, that it's most likely only the Grand Elder or Lord Guru that can create offspring. Even though Namekians all essentially can do the same thing, produce eggs, it's only Lord Guru. Like maybe it's some kind of general edict or way just to kind of keep the bloodline pure, but guys, you've only got a couple hundred left. I think everybody should be making babbies if you want to survive. Some of their other fabled properties is that they have the ability to regenerate almost instantaneously, as well as being able to stretch their limbs to any kind of limit, as well as, in some cases, being able to heal other people. That is if you're from the Dragon Clan and not what like Piccolo can do, which is punch people. Namekians also have a very, very long lifespan, being able to live for centuries without seemingly any kind of effect. Kind of like a more exaggerated versions of Saiyans, they stay in their prime for a very long time. For example, there's Kami, who is over 300 years old, and there's Lord Guru, who is over 500 years. And what we see in Dragon Ball Online is Piccolo looking not a day older than he is in Z, just over 250 years old, so that's not bad for Piccolo. Although now that I think about it, it's kind of sad because he's basically seen everyone that he's known just die. Well, I got dark. So that's the spark notes when it comes to Namekians, but there are more races out there to talk about. Another type of race which is very common and very well known within Dragon Ball is a race that really, it should have a name, but it doesn't. And I think you know what I'm talking about. That is of course the race that Frieza comes from. They're either the Frieza race, or the Ice Frost Demons, they're changelings, whatever they are. They have a lot of names, but they are definitely not Arcosians. That was a dub flub. Hashtag dub flub. For a species that represents the most arguably iconic character within Dragon Ball Z, we know very little about them. Maybe that was deliberate because mystery breeds intrigue, or maybe Toriyama couldn't be bothered to come up with anything else. Whatever, take your pick. Before Frost was revealed in Dragon Ball Super, we all thought that the Frieza race was derived from the same family line, Frieza and King Cold. And it's only the likes of Xenoverse, Xenoverse 2 and Dragon Ball Heroes that made us realise that there were other types of lines within the Frieza race kind of construct. And they're not all essentially evil. Most of them are actually portrayed in a more positive light. What we do know, however, is that they pride themselves as being one of the strongest races in the cosmos, as they seem to gain power just by basically living, as we see from Frieza, who never trained a day in his life before Resurrection F. It's actually ironically kind of like the Saiyans, the race that they tried to subjugate the most. And they can also learn new forms to disguise their power level, which is a more elaborate way of suppressing power level, which pretty much any character in the Z Fighters can do. Toriyama has also said that despite many times and many moments in the games and other kinds of side projects that Frieza has some kind of mother, it's actually not the case, and it is indeed only King Cold who is the only parent of Frieza, once again with the asexual reproduction there. They can also grow their own clothing and armor from their own biosuits. While Frieza's race on its own is inherently powerful, it is actually Frieza and King Cold who are the most powerful, and it turns out that they are indeed mutations of the Frieza race. Like they are some kind of next evolutionary step. So therefore, that differs them from the regular Frieza race, and that's how Frieza's empire formed, because they were the strongest. So there, we got Frieza's race and the Namekians having something in common. They actually have one sole parent. It makes the whole rift between the Frieza race and the Namekians all the more thought-provoking. We also know that the Frieza race are very durable, being able to live in the coldness of space without any kind of air, even if they're cut up to ribbons and are in fragments. Yikes. All members of our race are very prideful and obsessed with becoming the strongest in the universe. Frieza's family gained their evil from a mutation, but their pride is a staple of the race. As is said by Tion, a Frieza race in Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. They are trying to become stronger and are evolving at a breakneck speed. And while Frieza and Cooler are often shown to have a sibling rivalry within the games and the anime, they all share the common pride of having the strongest race in the entire universe. At least that's what they think. The last two races that we're going to be talking about today are not as prominent, but they are just as important. The first race are the Tuffles, the race that was wiped out by the Saiyans when they conquered Planet Plant. What we do know about them right from the get-go is that they're a very technologically advanced race, as well as being pretty docile. They're not a conquering race, they're just there to try and fulfill themselves and make themselves prosper. Which ultimately didn't help them against the Saiyans, and ultimately they were conquered and completely wiped out, with the Saiyans taking over their technology and thusly making their race accelerate remarkably in the space of 20 years. And of course, they were the original creators of the Scouter. So that Saiyan trope came from the race that they conquered, thusly making sure that the Saiyans looked like a very scummy race from the start, and that only the likes of Goku can possibly redeem. We also know that Tuffles can be found in other universes, as is known by Zabuto within Universe 2. So maybe we might get to see more of them as the new Broly movie drops. Maybe ultimately they could be working with the Saiyans, but that's all conjecture for now. The last race that we're going to be talking about are of course the Yardratians, as we touched upon in the previous discussion. The most interesting thing I got to talk to you about today is that the design that we see in Dragon Ball Z is not the original design that Toriyama came up with. That was of course what we see in Dragon Ball Online, so the original Yardratian looked like this. Yes. That's what Toriyama came up with. That wasn't a flub within Dragon Ball Online. This was the real deal. But in the Tournament of Power though, just for the sake of continuity with the anime, and now ultimately the manga, Jimenze from Universe 2 looks like the ones from the DBZ flashback. They are best known, of course, for their instant transmission technique, something that's become a staple of Dragon Ball, so we've got to give them kudos. And it seems to be a really standard ability, like it's some kind of innate ability. In Dragon Ball Online, the Yardratians moved to Earth in around about age 900, not to become some kind of friendly cooperation with Earth, but it was some kind of desperation tactic after their planet, Planet Yardrat, was taken over and destroyed by Mira. What a shame. Going from a race of wise monks and transportation wizards, they are now just a taxi service for anyone that's playing Dragon Ball Online. Tough break, guys. So that's all we've got to talk about today. I'm sure that all of us want to get some more information about all the other races that we see in Dragon Ball, even though we only see them visually, but I think Toriyama's not really interested in that, and we're only going to get more about Saiyans, maybe some more Namekians, maybe more about Frieza's race, and that's pretty much it. I want to get more backstory of the species of Beerus and Hit, and the individual members of the Ginyu Force. There's gotta be some stuff to talk about with them. But for now, they're just there to mostly look cool. So what do you guys think? Which race would you like to see more of? What kind of races do you want to see come up in Dragon Ball Super or its successor? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!